boys and girls. I thought I'd do a little bit of an impromptu video. I just finished watching some Women's World Cup on the telly, and I was googling around a little bit with some YouTubing, and came across the topic of the week from my pal Vince Venturella, who wanted to talk about traveling for Warhammer. So I have been at Warhammer for quite a long time, and I want to talk about this in sort of three different perspectives as far as what's regular now or lately for me, the kind of travels that I've done in the past and experiences that Warhammer has afforded me, and then I'll probably share the most memorable of those travel experiences. So to start with, let's talk about lately. I live in Edmonton, which is in the province of Alberta in Canada. We have a sort of a sister city more southerly in the province called Calgary. And between the two cities, there's probably about a half dozen worthy Warhammer events that go on throughout the year in each place. So that gives us the opportunity to travel to and from those cities. It's about a 2.5 hour to 3 hour drive to do that. So I do that kind of travel about 3 times a year, I would say. My last and most recent one was in early May, where I went down to actually have what turned out to be a 14-man event at a guy's house, where he just hosted it there, and it was a glorious time because we've been able to build up the relationships with these guys in Calgary. And that, I think, is the benefit of regular travel, is that you do get to build relationship with guys elsewhere. Consequently, part of that is there's another city that's 5 hours east of here called Saskatoon that I have some old relationships with because I used to go to college there, and that's where I first started playing Warhammer. So I still have some connections in the Warhammer community there, and that means that maybe only once a year, sometimes twice a year, we cross paths and play in one another's events as that goes. But let's talk a little bit more about what more adventurous and sort of far-flung things that I've done. Very simply, in recent years, I've been to Vancouver to play in events there, and out to Toronto the opposite way, and a couple other cities in between. In my early days of Warhammer, when I was very eager about it and working with the company of Games Workshop, there was a number of times that I was to Nottingham in England to see their Warhammer World and playing events at that place, various open days, etc. Experience in Bugman's Bar was a great part of those kind of travels every time. But when working for Games Workshop in Canada, we had our own games days, of course, every year that were held in Toronto, and that was a big event. And even though I was living there and not really traveling to it, except for a couple of occasions where I was working remotely, that was always a big deal. But if I'm going to tell you the story about the most memorable one, I think it would probably be about Games Day in Baltimore. Now, at the time that this went on, the North American HQ was, in fact, in a suburb of Baltimore called Glen Burnie, and we effectively tied in managerial meetings for the whole week leading up to and including the Games Day. So I spent the whole entire week in Baltimore, and I gotta tell you, when you get a group of nerds together with those kinds of things and organize a bunch of events, there's no parallel for it, because it's not only game table action, but it's everything else outside of it. There was a day that we spent paintballing, for example, and some guys were so enthralled by this that my roommate that I stayed with, who was from Texas, he brought all of his own paintball gear, and he loved it. He was such a veteran at it. Taught me all these things about paintball triggers and the equipment and the gear, and I don't even remember the terminologies of it all, but yeah, he just poured it on me, and I became paintball educated, which of course I've promptly forgotten because I'm not very interested in that in the end. We also did some bowling, which led to a bunch of other nonsense, including a half dozen guys getting into a very horrifying milk chugging contest where they took like 4-liter jugs of milk and tried to down them, which for most of them resulted in vomiting in the parking lot. we all stayed in the same hotel together, all of us guys. So there was like 40 to 50 people from all across North America hanging out and doing this. And then we had our meetings, which, you know, were treated with various levels of seriousness, but it was really just about, you know, predominantly still about promoting the hobby and getting the most from it, which is not unlike of what I talk about with colleagues of mine and players of Warhammer too. We all want to get the most out of Warhammer, so it wasn't that far-fetched for us to talk about that. The city of Baltimore itself, we got jockeyed around in a few different places, and I don't really understand the layout of Baltimore, to be truthful with you, except for that we went across a toll bridge several times, and I didn't have to pay for it, so that was okay. But the games day itself, which is a big culmination of the whole week, that was held downtown and at the convention center, was right close to Camden Yards. Now, admittedly, I didn't meet a lot of folk from Baltimore itself, because we were sort of our own internal group and had lots of people to interact with. But Baltimore, the city itself, struck me with a few memories that are totally not game related, but will always be associated with it because of how it happened. And that is that I witnessed like 3 violent crimes in the week that I was there. So sorry anybody that's listening to this who lives in and around Baltimore or loves Baltimore, but honestly, I had no desire to go back. It was a little bit frightening to watch a guy beat up his girlfriend / wife, whatever it was, in a public square, and then pull a gun on a couple of guys who would try to intervene. And then, 2 days later, we're at roughly close to the same place outside of a hotel where they were holding an international gay and lesbian convention. A couple of men got beaten up there for some hate crime and left to bleed on the sidewalk. Baltimore, you were good for Games Workshop, I guess, to hold a big event because lots of people came out to it and it was a giant success. But unfortunately, I'm going to kind of always associate those memories with it. But aside from that, let's end this on the positive. And ending this on the positive means whenever you get together and travel to a big place where they have a giant convention, whether this be a tournament just for gaming or something in the Games Day fashion or things like that, it is wonderful to have so many like-minded people together, and you can talk endlessly about it all day, all night. So it's top-notch. So anyway, that's me sharing my thoughts. And I'm going to sign off here for the evening. Play safe out there.